Welcome, everybody, to what I hope and what I know is going to be an extremely fascinating edition of Historically High. We're taking a dive in a couple different ways. We're taking a dive into the mind of Professor Adam as he takes the reins for this episode, and I get to sit back and play student. And we're going to try to understand I don't even know how to describe it. Like, why did this happen? Like, what was the point of this?
Excuse me. The whole point of the Stanford Prison Experiment was trying to, this guy named Dr. Philip Zimbardo. We're going to talk about him a lot, but basically it's a way to try to test the stressors on a normal human being when put in an environment like a prison. So he says that he's going to be testing the guards, he's going to be testing the prisoners, but at the same time, it just never really shows, because this is at a time, this is one of the reasons why institutional review boards had to start looking into ethics of experiments.
Oh, and experiments?
Yeah, because this was just so unethical, and the conclusions that he reached were fabricated in a way to make him sound like he was completely right about this, while at the same time he kind of proved a point of another experiment that had happened 10 years later. And we'll go through, I'll point out some ethical issues pretty quickly.
I feel like this whole episode is going to be one giant ethical issue. Yeah,
it is. But at the same time, at the root of this whole thing, this was 9 kids that were just college-age kids that ended up going through an experience that was supposed to last 2 weeks and only lasted 6 days, because the human mind can only take so much. Even in a simulated experience, you start to form these issues of trauma when you start to get your head played. I mean, now it kind of sucks looking at society because we have reality TV and you see it and you're like, oh, that's really great social science. There's cameras on those people all the time. They know exactly why they're there. They're going to act a certain way. But at the same time, some of the breakthroughs that you get, even in reality TV, is just a mental break that somebody goes through.
Someone forgets that the camera's rolling.
Yeah.
They show you a peek behind the curtain. And when there is no knowledge that there's a curtain, how much, decisions when someone is watching you, there is a devil and angel on your shoulder type of morality where it's just like, I'm going to quickly weigh the pros and cons, unless you just don't think anything through. But when you're in a position where you're made to feel like I believe these people were, that there's not going to be any type of punitive repercussions on you for doing this kind of stuff, that morality becomes much more of a background thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of we'll talk about another very famous experiment right before this, but at the time, we're talking about 1971, we're talking about a time of the Vietnam War being such a big deal here in the United States, but at the same time, there's a lot of things, we're going to be talking a little Vietnam War here, so everybody get excited. There's things going on in Vietnam where you have military members that are basically going AWOL. They're being arrested and put into prisons in Vietnam because they actively don't want to fight over there. Yeah. And when you get a bunch of military members that are put under lock and key and put under distress, they're going to freak out. Yeah. So you have a government that needs to figure out how to fix that problem, and sometimes that's how you get back to doing experiments like the Stanford Prison Experiment.
Let's turn to the colleges.
Yeah.
All right, man. I want to get into this, but before we do, remember, guys, wherever you listen to your podcast, highest rating, it helps us more than you guys know. Keep up with the feedback, as you're going to see by a slew of episodes coming out, even ones that have already come out. We get recommendations, and it steers us towards certain directions. It may not be the exact topic you're hoping for, but it definitely points us and makes us aware of certain things maybe we didn't know you guys wanted to hear about. So keep up the feedback. It's all been great. And anything else from you?
No, let's get to the experiments.
All right. This thing doesn't just come out of nowhere. Everything is built off of somebody else's work, right?
Yeah, and after World War II, the world is kind of left with a question. How does seemingly an entire country, even though it wasn't everybody in the country, get behind a kind of push to power like Adolf Hitler and like the Nazi Germans had? How do you stock prison camps and extermination camps with just people that were everyday citizens at one point in time?
I feel like this was a huge focal point of that Cold War period, because that's kind of what we're talking about. Anytime after World War II becomes the Cold War, this is where you get all of the emphasis on. I think there's a lot of factors. I'm going to bounce around on some stuff, so try to keep me on task here. You saw how successful the Nazi propaganda machine was at convincing a country to go along with blindly what your mission that you were trying to accomplish. A lot of people, because the concentration camps were isolated areas and everything like that, and I'm not fucking apologizing for it. What I'm saying is that if that happened at that time in a place where this isn't an age of 24-hour news cycle, it's you're getting shown what the propaganda state, the wing of the government is showing you in these instances. But you're having to have an infrastructure that surrounds the Holocaust and these internment camps and everything like that. Even the fact that, like, prisoner of war camps, you can't hide those from everybody's eyes. But even seeing those people be like, yeah, we're not going to say anything, we kind of have to be okay with this, you start to kind of realize that there is this mental war that is also kind of being waged that you can participate in without being actively fighting and trying to control and steer kind of the direction of a country. And that's got to be a huge fear, especially like what you're saying, when Vietnam pops up and you get this huge pushback from a section of the United States population, you're thinking to yourself, okay, how do we control this type of situation? Like, what's the mental conditioning of these people? And like, what have we seen before? Where have we seen propaganda be successful? Germany, things like that.
Well, and you're also talking about a time post-World War II when the prison population in the United States is booming. It's blowing up. And then you get into the 60s, and then you get into Nixon with the war on drugs coming later on. And then you get into Reagan pushing the war on drugs even further to where you're locking up all of these nonviolent criminals and the prison population explodes. And when the prison population explodes, there's going to be places that just overcrowding naturally happens because you're not building prisons fast enough for as fast as you're incarcerating people. And there's going to be a lot of shots at different things here. There's lots of shots at the prison system. There's unfortunately going to be some shots at the military, but it's just kind of one of those things where when you go looking for answers, you have these psychologists that kind of can dig into these things and try to figure them out. And unfortunately, before 1974, when you have IRBs that go into effect kind of because of some of this stuff, you can get away with a lot of things. Probably the worst experiment that I've heard of, at least. I mean, beyond murder, beyond really anything else, there was a prison experiment called Little Albert. You ever heard of Little Albert?
I've never heard of Little Albert.
Little Albert was a baby, who was conditioned basically to whenever he saw a white fluffy rabbit, the psychologist that was working this would make just an absolutely ear-shatteringly loud noise that would immediately make Baby Albert cry. Baby Albert started associating all of the characteristics in this white rabbit with these different things, and every time he saw them, he would freak out because he would be conditioned to expect the loud, scary noise that goes on.
He was getting ahead of it. The fear was already kicking in before the event had happened.
They did this to him as a child. After this whole experiment was over, they never reprogrammed him. Albert went through the rest of his life having a natural fear of white, fluffy things.
That's insane.
Yeah. So you have a kid that's just mentally tortured his entire life because...
And what are the odds it just stays with that?
Yeah. It's going to branch out to different things. The mental problems that they gave little Albert, just trying to figure out a conditioning experiment to try to know what's going on in the mind when that happens, and then just not fixing it. I don't know if there would be a way to fix it.
God, I wonder if that would apply to things like snow. I know that's like a jump, but like fluffy white, if there's just enough of a connection to where you see snow and you're like, no,
just freak out.
Yeah.
One that comes up after World War II, August 7th, 1961. This starts 3 weeks after Adolf Eichmann's trial had started in Jerusalem. Eichmann famously, I believe we talked about him in our Nazi escape episode to South America, ends up getting to South America. He goes into hiding. Eventually, they do find him.
This is the dude that they end up shoving in the van, right?
I think so.
Okay.
It could have been. Jerusalem, a place at this time, because they brought back the state of Israel after, 1948.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was part of, I think, what was kind of parsed out as part of the...
Yeah, British parts. This guy named Stanley Milgram starts his experiment at Yale University, and basically his hypothesis is just to measure the willingness of test subjects to obey an authority figure. Kind of an important thing.
You're tying it right back to the motivation being like, how did Hitler be able to... If the defense argument, like you said, at the Eichmann trial was that soldiers just following orders, that was the defense. And so you're naturally taking that. I don't know if it's natural, but you're saying, okay, let's go and put it to the test of how far we can really push people to see if this is a viable defense.
Exactly. And you know that during the Nuremberg trials, this was brought up time and time again. Eichmann was I think he was the architect of the final solution. Like, this is one of the top guys to where if he tries to start saying that, you got to look at it and be like, well, you were in on this from the start, and your plan was to a full completion.
Do you think that there were versions of this that happened in other countries?
Tons.
Okay.
So many.
Russia had to be rampant with this type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm imagining theirs were probably worse. Yeah. Way worse. I've been pushing around this thought. There's this episode called the Russian Sleep Experiment, and I got real into it, but it was just basically born on the internet. It's something called a creepypasta, where people were like putting these pictures up that were photoshopped of all of these different settings of these Russians that were basically tried to, I want to say the story is they kept them from sleeping for like 96 hours or something like that, and their bodies just degraded. Completely fake, completely fabricated. But the fact that it happens in Russia, it almost makes you believe it.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be based on something close to it.
Because you don't know what would happen, because you've never been up that long. You're like, oh shit, is that what happens?
Yeah. Yeah. So just wild. But back to Milgram. It's just this whole idea of these instructors basically telling them to perform these acts that are going to conflict with their personal consciences. Participants were told that they were going to assist in an experiment to help the learner remember word pairings. They were paid $4 an hour. That's $42 an hour today to go in and do this experiment. So they're being paid fairly well to go in and do this.
People get paid to test shampoos like that.
It's insane that that's what the inflation number is from the 60s. Basically, what they were going to do would be they would go into a room. There would be them and then the quote-unquote test subject that's, I forgot, it's like a patsy or some shit like that.
Someone working for the experiment.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were told to draw straws. Whoever got the short straw would go in and be the test subject. Whoever drew the long straw would be the one that was helping the teacher basically proctor the exam.
At this point, they have a pool of people, right? Everyone's kind of like seeing who's who. Half of those people are working for the experiment, correct? Because they have to, because they're all having to draw. But doesn't it work itself out to where all of the people that don't know it's an experiment end up being in control of the other guys are the test subject, the ones working for the experiment?
So I would doubt it's a 50-50 split, because all of the test subjects that are going in to try the memory test all know what's going on. And basically the setup is, as they go in, what you do is you give the word that they're supposed to associate with the other word. Then you give A, B, C, and D. That person chooses it. The actor chooses it. Actor chooses wrong. The first thing that you do is the instructor tells you to press a button that you're told will give them a 15-volt shock. And then as you continue to ask questions, there's a series of buttons that raise that all the way up to what would be 450 volts, which is considered like a pretty lethal shock. Yeah. Like, it'll kill you. Just to put that into perspective, if you jammed your finger into a household outlet, that's 120 volts.
Okay.
So we're talking 3 times that amount.
Electric
almost.
Chair shit.
Yeah, just almost 4 times that amount. Really, really bad shock. If the teacher indicated a desire to stop, so if the test subject that was helping proctor the exam said, I can't keep doing this. I'm not going to keep shocking this guy. This feels inhumane. They were told the first thing that they said was, please continue or please go on. The second time they objected, the experiment requires you to continue. The third time they said no. The guy that was also a part of the test says it's absolutely essential that you continue. Fourth time, you have no other choice. You must go on. If they pushed back a fifth time, the experiment was halted. They were able to be let go. Each participant paused the experiment at least once, so at least that's good, that you know that somebody, every single one of these people were like, oh, that's a little bit much to keep shocking this guy. And every time they hit the shock button, there was a recording of the actor that was inside the booth basically screaming out, I'm dying, you're killing me, I have a heart condition, you can't keep doing this to me. And so every single time they heard that, there was a little grain of trauma that's put on these people's minds to the point to where they want to stop. Luckily, everybody at least said it once. Unluckily, each participant, like I said, stopped it at least once. 40 participants went up to, all 40 of these people that were the test subjects, all of them went up to at least 300 volts.
So more than twice an outlet.
Yes. 65% of them went all the way up to 450 volts.
So well over half went up to a knowingly lethal amount of charge or shock to kill these people.
Because that was the goal that they were doing. The extreme emotional stress and just this insight into their own minds to know that they had the ability to go that far just because they were told to, not because they had any ill will towards these people. It was a completely just blind, okay, I'll follow the directions.
I don't know if it went this deep into it, but did any of the ones that went up to like 450, was there ever a situation in which they played it off like they had killed the person?
I don't believe it was that, but when they're screaming about a heart condition and the next one will kill me, I don't think any of them ever found out that they would have in fact killed somebody. They knew that that was an option.
Were they ever provided like, hey, this is just a test, you didn't hurt that person?
So that's where kind of the tricky part comes in, because Milgram's experiment was looked at and it was criticized saying, A, you paid these people to do this job. B, some of them weren't fully believing in what was going on. They knew that this was just a test. They sniffed it out. Once they figured out that you were going to shock a human being, they just kind of went along with it.
You were making accessible or fatal, like an option to kill that person as part of your experiment. Yeah.
The problem, though, is every single time, not every single time, but almost every time the Milgram experiment was repeated, got the same results. So
they were proving that it wasn't isolated. So at that point, I'm trying to find a way to dance around this, but there's not really. It does come into play that people can be convinced to do things if you are just insistent enough.
Well, there's a part of the population, 84% of the test subjects, said that they were glad or very glad to have been a part of this study.
Jesus.
So, but I think that it's kind of, it proves its point. I mean, you can understand and you can sympathize at the same time.
There's a difference between watching people in a fucking death camp and someone, as weird as it sounds, distinguishing a person behind some glass that's like that's shouting that you're shocking them and everything like that. You're disassociated from that at least a little bit by a piece of glass or wherever you can't see them or anything like that. There is a difference in knowing that like these are human beings, a ton of them that you're looking at here that are all being slowly killed.
Well, and that was another pushback towards the this is a Nazi excuse, was you're talking about test subjects that were there for an hour as opposed to these guards that were in these kill camps for years at a time. Yeah. And there's just no remorse that happens. This wasn't something that was just random out of the blue. Yeah. They were built up this way. Getting on to Philip Zimbardo, he was born in New York City, March 23rd, 1933. He grew up poor in the South Bronx. He got picked on a whole hell of a lot. Apparently, in the South Bronx at that point in time, Jewish folks weren't doing real well as far as safety-wise. He also developed whooping cough at like 8 years old. And he had to be isolated from his whole entire family and basically everybody else that wasn't like a caretaker that would come in and drop stuff off for 6 months.
This is a movie about how a serial killer is created.
Yeah, and Zimbardo, he's going to take a lot of flack, rightfully so, throughout this entire thing. I do think that he did have some decent thoughts on some things, and I don't think he was completely wrong, but I think this experiment in and of itself just kind of proved that maybe anything that he comes up with, you got to take a look at. 1954, he ends up completing his bachelor's with a triple major: psychology, sociology, and anthropology from Brooklyn College. Graduated summa cum laude. Depending on what college you're going to, it can either be the top 1, 2, or 5% of the class.
I mean, that's a crazy trifecta, but it makes perfect sense. You find out about evolution and where we came from. You find out about how our thought process works.
Yep.
And then you see how that all comes together and how we interact with each other.
And social science, exactly. 1955, he gets his master's. 1959, he gets his PhD in psychology from Yale University. He ends up teaching at Yale from 1959 to 1960, moves on to NYU from 60 to 67, moves on again to Columbia from 67 to 68, and ends up landing in the Bay Area at the Harvard of the West, Stanford, and Palo Alto. He taught there for 50 years.
That's an insane resume
Yeah.
for a professor.
Well, and the other interesting thing, I didn't dive into it too much, but there had to have been a little crossover, because if he taught in Yale from 59 to 60 and Milgram conducted the experiment at Yale in 1961, they had to have known of each other, not just outside of like actual papers or anything like that were submitted and read, but they had to have been
within that department. Yeah.
They had to have been on faculty together.
Yes.
So there had to have been a little crossover of ideas. 1971 Palo Alto. Palo Alto is one of the greatest towns that I've been to in California. As a kid, I absolutely loved Stanford. I had a belief up until probably 4th grade that Stanford was a chance for me. And then I realized pretty quickly after that.
I don't know if I ever have that dream, so congratulations on your 4 years, man.
Yeah, no, I owned a Stanford sweatshirt.
Nice.
That was as close to actually.
When that around here, people were looking at me like, "What the fuck?
What is this kid? That's not a Stanford student.
They don't have a good football team."
Yeah, well, I was 10 years old and I was the size of a college kid, but at the same time, it was just never really in the cards. Palo Alto, it was kind of a sleepy little town, sort of started to blow up in the 70s, because we're talking about 70s counterculture. This is less than 50 miles away from Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. This is a place of change and a place of thought. I want to say that the Dead were formed in Palo Alto. So this is a pretty transformative area. 1970, there's a ton of civil unrest because we have the operations into Cambodia that are going on during Vietnam. And so there's a lot of pushback, and there's a lot of protesters.
There's pushback against unnecessary war.
Yeah. So you get this pushback from these students, these young thinkers that are being transformed through just this counterculture movement. Palo Alto does kind of calm down a little bit in 71. It's just a very interesting time in the place where this takes place, being in California, and the fact that these are going to be college kids that aren't all coming from Stanford. This takes place during the summertime, so it's just pretty much anybody that's in a middle-class family that are being looked at for this.
Townies.
Yeah, pretty much. The funding would actually come from the United States Office of Naval Research, and it's basically to see what the psychological effects were of becoming a prisoner or a prison guard. This power roles dynamic where you throw rules in and then symbols, you get a lot of group identity, and just he's looking basically for the situational validation of, if you take people and you put them into prison and then you give guards some semblance of power, there's going to be a situation where that power ends up abusing the lesser people.
Was there any additional kind of like a side quest or maybe an ulterior motive other than that to say, well, if we have the guards behave this way, what kind of reactions can we get out of those prisoners? And are those reactions in any way useful to us, considering that we're in Vietnam right now, and we're going to be taking prisoners. What tactics can we use in order to gain the most and break these prisoners?
Well, and they have a lot of problems going on because they're basically looking for any sort of behavior that would just basically repulse a normal individual. Like, how bad is this? Part of the reason this is going on is August 1968, there's a prisoner revolt at a holding facility called Long Bin Jail in Vietnam. And the issue is you have all of these American soldiers that are, again, defecting. They're trying to leave. They're committing these crimes against the military. Long Bin Jail was a jail that had already been there previously for the military. And once all of these defections start happening, like, we got to boost these numbers up.
Yeah.
We got to put as many asses in seats as possible. In 1966, it held 400 prisoners. That was capacity. 1968, it held over 700 prisoners. 2 years.
Almost doubled.
Almost doubles. And you're at max capacity at 400 prisoners. So you immediately start getting this revolt.
And this is in Vietnam.
Yeah. South Vietnam. These are all
soldiers.
American soldiers that revolt against their own people because of the treatment that they're getting as American soldiers in a prison in Vietnam. It's just absolutely incredible that this was going on. I'm sure we'll talk about it more then.
Well, and the fact that they're there means that there's that many people that are essentially being mistreated as part of the military that's causing them to go AWOL in those situations. Like, the fact that they're in a fucking jungle they don't understand, fighting for something that hasn't been explained to them. And even when it's been explained to, it's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you get a full explanation of what's going on, it's not a justification for what you're doing. It's not something that if you believe in it, but you were called over there and you had to go, you're probably going to push back.
Yeah.
And when you push back, you get thrown in jail. And when that jail overcrowds and all of the conditions that you're living in become untenable, you riot. It's just kind of how things work. So if the naval office can go ahead and put a little research into maybe how these guards could potentially treat prisoners better, or how we can get in the prisoners' minds a little bit to keep them down from rioting and revolting instead of just treating them better.
You almost kind of think, like, what's the likelihood that we can try to get these guys back on the front?
Yeah.
Or get these guys back into, like, operation where we can almost convince them that they should be here and that they need to be helping out.
Or just stop us from having to fight a war against our own people while we're fighting a war against people that we shouldn't be fighting anyway. The university would end up approving this experiment, which is fucking real lucky that this happened when it happened for Stanford, because they could have been sued out of existence if this happened later. I want to know what
the pitch was for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Zimbardo basically trying to put his star on the map as a very trusted and respected psychologist. Plus, Stanford's getting all of these different government grants for these different things because Palo Alto and Stanford are in very high regard when it comes to doing any sort of research. It's still that same way. They get, a ton of government contracts because they're kind of a think tank. Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley because the people come out of Stanford and immediately get jobs in that area. Zimbardo put out this ad. Let me look it up. 75 people. They said over 100 people applied. They cut it down to 75. From that 75, they get a little bit more information. I should have had these pulled up. So the ad said, male college students needed for psychological experiment of prison life. Keep that in mind. $15 per day for 1 to 2 weeks beginning August 14th. For further information and applications, come to room 248 in Jordan Hall, Stanford U. At that point in time, $15 a day, carry over for inflation is about $100 a day. College student making $1,400 before you leave to go back to college, probably a pretty good deal.
And you're going to get me out of class because this is a university-sponsored thing. So what? Well, I get paid and
we're still summertime.
Oh, that's true.
So
okay,
this is
people still living on campus, don't have jobs or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, and even if you're headed back to a different university, you can always use an extra $1,400 once you get there because you're going to be studying. They whittled the number down to 75. From there, they went through this screening assessment, these interviews, behavioral tests, any sort of mental acuity tests that they can put these through. There were 24 that ended up passing. I don't know if it plays into the story, but it doesn't shock me. All white, one Asian. So out of the 24, there was one Asian. You kind of have this very similar pool. They're all middle-class kids. They all appear to be healthy and psychologically stable. There's questions on that. One of the big things was they wanted no criminal backgrounds, no medical problems, no psychological impairments, and how they're going to dole these positions out becomes a game of chance because they're flipping a coin for every single one of these participants, whether they're going to be a guard or a prisoner. So at the same time, you're not looking at any of their psychological traits that you found because you weeded out all of the possible improprieties, and now you're just going on a game of chance to see if you're going to be in control or if you're going to be the submissive.
Were they aware that it was being like? Did they get to watch the coin flip, or was it something to? Okay.
They did all this behind closed doors.
I was going to say, think of the psychological, like them just starting out like that and being like, "This is what we're flipping. This right here is going to determine whether this might be a much better stay for you or a much worse stay for you."
Well,
like even that itself.
Interesting thing about this 1971 California, all 24 of them had said that they would rather be prisoners than guards. So you have a group of people who are looking at authority and pushing back against it and rebelling because they're all rebellious college kids.
I also think there's an aspect of that of saying, okay, so this is what I'm going to choose. I know that because it's an experiment, you can't actually do to me what you do, like to actual prisoners. We've committed no crime. I think that's a mindset that, whether that's discussed or not. The other aspect of that is, now with me knowing that and me knowing I only have to do this for 2 weeks, I could spend that 2 weeks basically just relaxing. Yeah, I have to be on a schedule and everything, but if I'm just chill, then I won't be hassled, I won't be messed with. Versus the guards who actually have to be working that entire time.
If I got a summer school course, if I'm studying for any sort of exams that are coming up.
I heard prisoners get to read books. Like, yeah, I'll catch up on a couple of these.
Yeah. So the choices were split 12 and 12. You had 3 sets of 3 that would, on the prison guard side, that would basically switch out. They were on 8-hour rotating shifts. You have 3 alternates. You have 9 prisoners that go in. You have 3 alternates there. Again, this is a 7 to 14 day period, or $15 a day. The basement corridor in Jordan Hall, the psych building, was basically formed into this mock jail. It's literally just a hallway that has 3 offices that are on one side. Then there's going to be it's like a file room. It's literally 1 yard square. So 3 by 3, and that's going to become the whole. You also have another office on that side that's going to be the office of the warden, and another office on the other side of the whole that's going to be the superintendent's office. Then you have this very cool guard room where everybody gets to hang out and chill and smoke cigs inside whenever you want, do all that kind of stuff. We're talking about a basement, so we're talking about 0 windows, 0 natural light. Everything is fluorescent bulbs at that point in time, I believe. I don't think it would be neon at that point. But these rooms were basically retrofitted with steel doors, just like you would find in a prison, that have the bars over the windows. There were 3 cots put in, 3 blankets put in, and 3 pillows put into every single one of these rooms. And this whole entire thing is transformed. The the hallway inside, it's like a 4 or 5 foot. It might have been a 6 foot hallway. It's considered the yard. So they're not going outside. They're spending all of this time.
What are you supposed to do in that amount of space?
In a basement, yeah. Plus
push-ups?
They're going to do a lot of those. They also don't have a bathroom down there. So any time that they have to relieve themselves, they have to wait and be on a schedule. They have to go in at least 2s. Your lavatory time, 5 minutes. The hell are you going to do in 5 minutes?
I mean, back then when you weren't distracted by phones, I used to be able to do business in probably 5 minutes or less.
With 8 other dudes standing around and a bunch of guys slapping billy clubs in their hands.
Never mind. I retract my previous statement.
Just a little kind of nuts. Zimbardo was going to be the superintendent. First mistake. One of his undergrad assistants, David Jaffe, is going to be the warden. Before anything starts going off, there's an orientation that's held the day before with the guards. And basically what this is they bring them in. They say, you were chosen to be guards because we looked at your evaluations. We decided that you were going to be the best people for this guard. I believe that you are going to be able to keep control of this situation
Just fluffing them.
in a good way. Well, at the same time, this was all coin toss.
Yeah.
So you're telling these people that you have this irrational belief in them.
You're already putting them in the mindset that they have certain attributes or they've exhibited certain things that make you believe that they belong in this role.
Yeah.
That they will succeed in this role.
And then you're telling them that you believe that all of those traits are going to be the people that are going to keep the order the most, which goes into something called demand bias, where you're starting to put ideas in these people's heads that you have an expectation that they need to meet.
You're also, just by titling it, if you're telling someone they would make a better guard than a prisoner in this, you're telling them that these people that have been deemed as the prisoners have exhibited qualities and traits in prisoners. That's already putting in your head like, oh, these people deserve to be in this role based on what these psychologists are telling me, they behave like.
Well, and I can push back and forth on either way here, but the fact that the ad was specifically talking about prison life almost puts a thought in your head that this is going to be a certain way.
Yeah.
We're not going out on a picnic. We're not coaching a baseball team here. There's going to be a dynamic that's going to be going on that's immediately going to be confrontational. Mm-hmm. The only rule is, well, not the only rule, but the main rule is that there's no physical harm that you can put on a prisoner to try to subdue them or try to gain order. And at the same time, you're telling them we can also need to make this feel like a real prison. We need to make them feel bored. We need to annoy them. We need to show that we have control over every aspect of their daily lives. We just basically need to assert our dominance without physical harm. And again, you're poisoning the well immediately if you're looking at an experiment that's trying to show you a reaction of a guard while telling him that you have these expectations of what's going to be.
And what are you also basing that off of? Okay, so what year are we in?
1971.
Okay. TV's a thing. Cop shows are a thing.
Huge.
You've been watching the FBI on TV. You have it in your head based upon what you've seen portrayed. This is how guards act. This is how law enforcement acts. You might even think someone like, hey, Jim's dad that I know is a prison guard, and Jim tells me all of these stories about his dad having to beat up on these inmates and stuff like that. You're already forming your perception based upon anything that you've seen in this role that you're now put in.
Yeah, you kind of already have an archetype of the kind of character that you want to play. As far as the prison guards go, they are given I believe it's like a beige prison outfit. They are given a badge. They're given billy clubs that were actually loaned out to them by the Palo Alto Police Department. We're not using fake billy clubs at this point. You got to use a real thing, right?
We got a whole crate of billy clubs in the back. Help yourself.
The massive thing that they give them is mirrored sunglasses. Because if you can't make eye contact with somebody, you can't really tell their emotional state. You can't ever tell if they're looking at you. There's any kind of connection that you can draw between you and your captor because all you're seeing is just the mirrors of the sunglasses.
You also don't know if they're watching you.
Yeah.
It makes you paranoid that you could be being watched at any time.
Well, and this whole place is bugged. It's bugged to the gills. Every single room has a microphone in it. One half of the hallway is completely blocked off. There's a camera that shows out into the quote-unquote yard, into the hallway. So Zimbardo's watching everything. He's listening to everything. At the end of the day, when these prison guards are going home, they're filling out kind of diaries of how they felt about the day, what's going on.
Do they get to actually go back to their houses?
Yeah.
So they're the prison guards in the role. Okay.
8-hour shift. You get to go home for 16 hours, come back and do it again, which kind of confuses it. We'll talk about that here in a second. So Saturday, setup happens, guard orientation happens, guard uniforms are handed out. Again, the bathroom's on a separate floor, so that's going to become a massive issue. Sunday, day one, the participants who were the prisoners were arrested at their homes by local Palo Alto Police Department.
It's like full-on actual Palo Alto cops.
Drove the cop cars to the houses, knocked on the doors. Ma'am, is your son home? Yes, they bring him out. They end up arresting them on either a charge of burglary or armed robbery.
Can you imagine if someone's parents didn't know about that? Like the person forgot to mention it?
So they're doing these in the middle of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And there are news organizations that are following this whole thing with cameras.
They know what's going on.
Yeah. So
but at the same time, What does everyone else in the neighborhood think?
Hey, what do you tell your neighbors after that? You're like, oh, Jimmy's just in an experiment in college.
You got
That's
to
why
nip
he's
that in
being
the ass. You
arrested.
got to let everyone in the neighborhood, like a sex offender walking around, you got to
Yeah.
be like, hey, just so you know, Jimmy's going to be arrested. News will probably show up, but it's all part of just a college experiment.
It's there's no real good way to say it until hopefully at least after this came out, they're like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Excuse me, you have burglary or armed robbery, so you have two felonies
You
that
can
they're
rob
being arrested
burgers and
for.
it'd be burgery.
Burger if you're stealing from a fast food chain. They are patted down. They're arrested. They're thrown in the back of the police cars. They're taken to the Palo Alto police station for a full booking, full fingerprinting, everything like that.
Full cavity search.
Not yet.
Okay. Wait, they do?
Yeah, not yet. So they're actually held in a cell there, blindfolded the entire time until they get everybody rounded up to be taken to Jordan Hall. They put bags over their heads as they're being taken into Jordan Hall, just basically so they don't know that they're going into a safe environment of something familiar that is on the Palo Alto campus. It's pretty popular, pretty famous. Once they get into the yard, the hallway, I'm just going to call it the yard from now on, strip nude. They are deloused like you get in prison.
Like off Super Troopers?
Yeah.
Except they're using powdered sugar or Super Troopers?
Delicious. This wasn't powdered sugar. I don't believe it was actually delouser because it was more of a spray than a powder. Then they were strip searched, cavity searched, and they were then assigned a number that would go on the front of these short smocks that they were wearing, basically like a short mullen dress. No underwear. Not a single drawer was found on these prisoners the entire time. They were given stocking caps, like literal like ladies' stockings to put over their head because for some reason that was the unethical line was they couldn't tell them to shave their heads. And maybe that was a part of it. Maybe you wouldn't be a willing participant in the 70s if they were going to shave your head.
I was thinking like Scrooge from A Christmas Carol type stocking hat.
No, we're talking like cat burglar,
Gotcha.
pull it over their face. But at the same time, you're slowly stripping them of their identity. You're assigning them numbers in lieu of their names. You're taking their clothing options away. You're taking basically their hairstyles away by giving everybody a stocking cap. There's a chain that's placed around one of their ankles at all times. So even if you're asleep, laying in bed, and you go to roll over and you feel that chain against your skin, you're constantly reminded
Like
that
just a
you're
bracelet
in
type
prison.
deal?
No, like a chain with a lock.
Oh, that connected your ankles?
No, just around one. Just so as you're walking, you can hear the chain, you can feel the chain at all times to know basically that you're in prison, that you're locked up.
Okay.
They're given rubber.
That's something that like seems so innocuous at first, but then as you start to think about it and the sound and the fact that it's a foreign thing.
Yeah.
And then when you do feel it and you recognize you're like, oh, like, cause you'll have those times when you're sleeping and you'll wake up and you'll be like, you know, that moment where you don't know where you're at and you maybe think you're in your bed and then you feel that thing around your ankle and you're just like, oh, fuck.
And part of this contract that they signed before they went in and did it was that they could leave at any time. They could say the magic word. Zimbardo would come in and get them. They would be able to be released. Yeah, I don't know what the safe word was.
Banana pancakes.
You're going to find out that there's a lot of words that they use to try to be safe. We already have so many unethical things that are going on because you have the demand bias that's on the guards. Very unethical. You also have him using the police department to go basically wreck these people's lives for a little bit as they get arrested by the actual police department
For
in front of everybody.
$15 a day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, $1,400 ain't bad for a college kid. But
Their parents like, you're a fucking idiot.
yeah, if you leave, you forfeit your money.
Oh,
So you kind of got to be in or out. For the whole rest of the night, basically they're lined up. They have a meeting with the warden for him to explain everything that's going on. Then you have the rules of prison that they have to follow. There's a lot of them, so I'm going to try to burn through them, but keep with me. Prisoners must remain silent during rest periods, after lights out, during meals, and whenever they are outside in the prison yards. So the only time that they can talk is when they're in their cells or when they're asked a question by one of the guards. Prisoners must eat meals at meal times and only at meal times. There was 6 chairs that were placed around a table in the yard.
There's
so
8, 9.
9, yeah.
Okay.
So the second three would have to eat in the second shift. All of these meals were all prepared by the guards that they're going to come to not trust very quickly, so there's going to be some issues there. Prisoners must participate in all prison activities, so as far as counts, roll call, anything like that, you have to participate in this. Prisoners must keep their cell clean at all times, beds must be made, personal effects must be neat and orderly, floor must be spotless. Prisoners must not move, tamper with, deface, damage walls, ceiling, windows, doors, or any prison property. Prisoners may never operate cell lighting inside, so you can't be flipping the light on whenever you want. When the guards say the lights go off, they go off. When they say they go on, they go on.
This is something that they went to other prisons. They're like, give us the rules, and they just basically cherry picked probably all of the ones that.
And there's a guy that gets involved it's a pretty insane story. We'll talk about him, but he was a former prisoner. Prisoners must address each other by number only. So you've completely stripped their identity because now they don't even have names. Now, even if you're talking amongst yourself, you're required to call them by their number instead of their name. Prisoners must always address the guards as Mr. Correctional Officer, and the warden as Mr. Chief Correctional Officer. Prisoners must never refer to their condition as an experiment or a simulation. They're in prison until paroled.
So you got to commit.
Yeah, and if you're not, you're going to be punished. Prisoners will be allowed 5 minutes in the lavatory. No prisoner will be allowed to return to the lavatory within 1 hour after a scheduled lavatory period. Smoking is a privilege. Smoking will be allowed after meals or at the discretion of the guards. Prisoners must never smoke in the cells. Abuse of smoking privilege will result in permanent revocation of smoking privilege. Mail is a privilege. All mail flowing in and out of the prison will be inspected and censored. So even if you're trying to reach out to anybody, we will read everything that you say. If we don't agree with it, it's not going out. Anything that comes into you in this period of time, if we deem it that it's not necessary for you to have, we're going to take it.
Did it give details on like what their allowance would be for communication? Like if they had any type of or like regulations, like you can only send letters once every 3 days?
Yeah, there will be a couple times that we talk about that. Visitors are a privilege. Prisoners who are allowed to visit must meet him at the door of the yard. The visit will be supervised by a guard. The guard may terminate the visit at his discretion. So if you start complaining, if you start giving away too much, if you start saying too much to your family, they can just go ahead and terminate this visit.
It just kind of think about it like 2 weeks doesn't really sound like that long. So you'd think in kind of just glancing at this, hey, don't even give him visitation. If you're trying to establish what it is like for a prisoner, you don't really think of visitation a lot. You think of the isolation. So you would think that to get more of a reaction out of them, completely cut off everything from the outside. But it works the other way around.
Yeah.
When you're seeing something from the outside, it reminds you of being out. You have the freedom to get out, but you know that if you do it, the time you've spent here is wasted.
And there's some times that it comes down to these prisoners don't feel like there's a way to get out. Like they feel forced in. We have 14. This one's kind of innocuous. All prisoners will stand whenever the warden, the prison superintendent, or any other visitors arrive on the premises. Prisoners will await an order to be seated and resume activities. 15. Prisoners must obey all orders issued by guards at all times. A guard's order supersedes any written order. So even if you believe that something in the contract protects you, if that guard gives you the order, you have to do it.
Oh, shit.
The warden's order supersedes both the guard's order and the written rules. Orders of the superintendent of prisoners are supreme. 16. Prisoners must report all violations to the guards. So we're telling you now, if you see something, you must say something, no matter how strong the bond is between you and the guard or between you and the other prisoner.
I was going to say, so what you're now doing at that point, you've removed their names and addressing, so you're dehumanizing it. But now what you're doing is you're wrecking any likelihood of trust or solidarity because everyone is out to get everyone according to the rules.
You're separating the bonds that these kids have together. 17, failure to obey any of the rules above may result in punishment. I don't think there was much of a decision on what punishment would be besides no violence, which will be eventually thrown in the wayside. After the rules of the prison were read, they did a roll call. As they were going down through their roll call, they were supposed to have memorized their numbers at this point. If they get those roll calls wrong, they are forced to do push-ups out of punishment. First roll call ends up taking a little bit longer than they expected. The guards kind of start to find their voices, which is a bad thing. Lights out that night finally happens. Monday, day 2, 2:30 in the morning. I think it was a Monday. It's just day 2, whatever. 2:30 in the morning, guard shift change happens. As soon as the guard shift change happens, you have to have a roll call to make sure everybody's there. 2:30 in the morning, whistles start blowing, batons start beating against doors. Everybody is woken up for this roll call. Prisoners, 2:30 in the morning, they're there for what you were talking about, this vacation of lounging and hanging out or anything like that. They refuse to leave their cells. They start to get real angry about the whole incident that happened with the roll call before in the numbers, so they rip off their numbers, and they basically start just talking shit to the guards. If you want me, come in and get me, see what happens. The guards go ahead and find fire extinguishers, and they start spraying them into the prison cells. And basically, once they are able to gas them enough, they're able to break in, they drag them all out. As soon as they get dragged out of their cell into this yard, all of the main instigators end up taking their time in the hole. The guard meeting, it was established that the whole maximum of 1 hour a prisoner can spend in this 3x3 room. I'm sure you're probably fairly close to the same. A 3x3 room, if you raise your elbows, you're hitting both sides.
You can't really sit. I mean, you can sit with like your knees maybe tucked up, tight against you, but you're standing for the most part.
There's just not a whole lot that you can do. Out of this first roll call, it ends up taking an hour for them to get through everything because they constantly keep messing up. They'll go through the order. If they get it right and the guards aren't happy with it, they'll tell them that they have to go through in descending order. They'll tell them, what is this prisoner's number right next to you? What is his name? What is his number? You don't say his name. You just got to say his number every single time. So after a ton of push-ups, after a ton of sit-ups, a ton of jumping jacks, after an hour, they're allowed to go back into their beds at 3:30 in the morning. Not real great because morning roll call is at 6 o'clock in the morning. So you're woken up at 2:30. You go through an hour of physical abuse, mental abuse, physical workouts. You have to get back in bed 3:30. If you can calm down at all.
Yeah, because that's your first night. And now you're all of a sudden realizing, oh shit, the stuff we thought we were going to be able to do, no.
Yeah. So, of course, when 6 a.m. roll call comes up, we have another pretty big issue that goes on as the prisoners start to freak out. Kind of what they do is they begin to separate inmates as far as good cells, bad cells. There is one, what they call the privilege cell, which is basically given special meals. They're able to keep their beds and their blankets, everything like that. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to separate these people from this group that they're supposed to be leaning on.
You're creating strife within,
And to their credit, when the privilege cell was given their privilege meals and actually being fed, they refused to eat, which then pissed the guards off even more that there was still the solidarity that they were trying to break.
Yeah.
Once they finally got everybody out of their cells, they basically told them that they had to clean up all of the mess that they had caused in the cells. While they were doing that, the prison guards took all of their blankets outside and dragged them through the brush. It just basically caused all sorts of burrs and twigs and shit like that to be stuck in these blankets.
Hiking in the hills and you get all the little thistles and everything like that in your shoes, just
all
and
over
you
their
feel
blankets.
one of those gets in your sock and it's driving you crazy. A whole blanket just getting dragged, and you'd spend the entire night trying to pick them out or just not have a blanket.
They bring them back in, they throw them in the cells, and they say, clean up your blankets. So they're forced to do that while everything's going on. Day 2 gets a little testy. Prisoner 819 is mouthing off. He's kind of starting to test the limits. Over this period, all of these troublemakers that are causing issues or pushing back or fighting with these guards are being sent to the hole one by one for an hour at a time to start. And you start to see that the guards may be finding their stride in how they want to try to rule this place.
Well, they haven't really been told no at this point.
Well, not only have they not been told no, they get pulled in for a guard meeting with Zimbardo. And Zimbardo says, you have to push back against these riots. You have to stop this from happening. You guys have to be the ones to establish order inside of my prison. He said, my prison. He's the experimenter.
Yeah.
He's already starting to turn into somebody who may not be doing an experiment, maybe somebody who's slipped into his own delusions.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy that's supposed to be running everything. Day 3, they put these good cell inmates, the privileged cell, they split them up. They put them into the other ones, hoping to cause more division, because if you put the good cellies in that got the special treatment in with the guys that got fucked over, they're probably not going to be too pumped to see them show up. Once they're returned to their original cells, these emboldened guards begin handing out just arbitrary punishments. Just, if you didn't clean this up well enough, you have to do 15 push-ups. If you didn't properly make your bed in the morning, I'm going to strip your bed, I'm going to take your pillows, just whatever they can do to kind of start attacking people for these individual infractions. One of the things that they do is they start restricting bathroom access. And if you start restricting bathroom access, you are given buckets that have to sit in the cells. And if you don't get bathroom access at night, if you are shitting or pissing in that bucket, it stays in the cell with you the entire night before it's cleaned out in the morning at 6 a.m. for roll call.
And each of them has an individual cell.
There's 3 to a cell.
Oh, shit.
So
if you're making that decision, you're also making 2 other people.
Yep.
Okay.
And you got to make in front of 2 other people that are sometimes naked.
And that's the point, is if you do have to do it, you have to do it bad enough that that's not an issue for you.
Yeah. Intermittently, they're getting their beds taken away. They're getting their blankets taken away. They're getting their clothes taken away. So you could have 3 just naked dudes sitting inside of a cell together trying to figure out and plot what's going on.
And this is happening just throughout the day.
Yeah. Prisoner 8612, Douglas Corpy, has a breakdown. He had a breakdown and caused enough disruption. He's screaming that he needs to speak to Zimbardo. He ends up going and speaking to the warden. The warden goes ahead and passes that along to Zimbardo. Zimbardo ends up meeting with him. He brings in this gentleman named Carlo Prescott, who served 17 years in San Quentin. He was the prison consultant. And as 8612, as Corpy goes in and starts basically explaining what's going on, why the guards are treating him poorly, why he's having this breakdown and freaking out, how it's unfair the way that they're being treated. He wants to go home. He has to go. Carlos slaps his hand down on the table and he goes, "You wouldn't last a second in actual prison. You would be raped by the biggest guy on the yard and then sold off for 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes to one of the shot callers, and you would be their girlfriends. You're not a tough guy. You're not going to come in here and pound on this desk and tell us what we're going to do." All of a sudden, Zimbardo gets into it and he goes, "It's been a day. You spent 36 hours here. You need to try to get it together. You're not leaving." And as soon as Corpy hears that, he kind of falls into a bit of distress. Corpy's story gets a little conflated because they go and talk to him afterwards, and he basically says that it was all an act to try to get out of there because he was supposed to be studying for some test that he was going to be taking in the fall, and he was told that he could bring his books in. He asked for his books. They told him no, so he starts to freak out.
I'm not going to lie. I would probably say anything to get the fuck out of there, too.
Well, here's the interesting thing. When he's returned to the rest of the prisoners, they ask him what happened, and he goes, "They're not going to let us out. He told me I can't leave. None of us can leave." And immediately, as soon as everybody hears one of the people that has been causing the most problems and kind of one of these leaders say, "You can't leave," it blows everybody up. They realize that they're in prison and they can't go anywhere. Even though they were told they could, 8612 freaked out. He said he was going home. He talked to Zimbardo. Zimbardo told him no. And
you're already distressed.
Yeah.
And you're just looking for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that answer comes from somebody who just went in to request the same thing that you think that you can request at any time, and they were told no. So how do you feel any different that if you go in that scenario, you're going to be allowed to leave? Yeah, it's fucking terrifying.
8612 continues to freak out. They throw him in the hole. He has just an absolute full final breakdown to where they have to pull him out of the hole. The guards chain him up. They take him back to Zimbardo. Zimbardo ends up saying, "You're not doing what we need you to do. This isn't right. Just go ahead and leave. You're good. You're done." There's conflicting stories about this in, I believe it's called Silent Rage. It's something that Stanford put out on this. Zimbardo floated the idea that he told the other prisoners that 8612 was moved up into a higher security part of this prison.
Oh. And then they're like, what? There's another part? Like, so this is an actual prison?
I think more of what happened was, because this is a rumor that scares the shit out of Zimbardo. I think he might have been saving face on this, is there starts to be rumors going around the prison that 8612 is going to get out, go get his friends, and come have a prison break. Zimbardo doesn't like that thought. The guards are kind of start to freak out because they don't know
They're
what's
not real
coming.
guards, yeah.
There's
They
a
don't have
chance.
the authority to technically do something. They're part of an experiment. That's a wake-up call to remind you of that.
They're on the third day of being guards. What the shit's going on? Now
Yeah.
they have to put down a prison
A
break?
revolt, yeah.
This kind of emboldens the inmates. They kind of have this little bit of hope, like, hey, 8612 is going to save us. This freaks Zimbardo out so much that he kind of starts looking around. He calls down to the Palo Alto Police Department. He goes, hey, I know that there's an older part of the prison that you're not using. Can we maybe transfer everybody there for the night? There's potentially going to be a prison break. And I'm sure the police on the other end are like, no, you dumb shit. This is a prison. You're conducting an experiment inside the basement.
Yeah, you're in the basement of a teaching building. There's an amphitheater for lectures right above you.
What'd these guys do? Oh, nothing? You just gave them fake charges? Yeah, we don't keep people on fake charges here. No, sorry. So Zimbardo's like, shit, what are we going to do?
He's like, oh, they arrested the people for me. I thought I had a little bit more pull.
Yeah, maybe some carte blanche to be using anything else. Well, Zimbardo has the first round of family prison visits coming up, so he kind of has to put any sort of idea to rest for a little bit. The families are basically told all the rules about how this is going to go, kind of in the debrief before any of this happens. Zimbardo comes in, he tells everybody the prison must be clean, the prison must be shiny, everything must be good. And what do you do for your soldiers before you send them into battle?
You will be clean before I enter you, but only after you're clean.
What do you do before you send your soldiers into battle? What's the last thing you give them?
Food?
Good meal. Exactly. They give them the best meal that they spent the entire time in prison right before that. Full 3-course meal they ended up making for them. They actually ran the meal a little bit longer to cut into the amount of time that they were told that they would be given with the family. And then as the family showed up, all of the rules that they were told as far as how many people can come in gets changed to 2. So if you bring 4 people, you can only
shortening the amount of time between the prisoners coming in last. So they're trying to create that animosity and that sense of favoritism.
Families are pissed. Families show up. They're sitting waiting. Zimbardo comes out. He goes, I'm sorry. The prisoners are running long doing what they were doing. They're actually having dinner. So your time's going to be short and they'll be in there shortly. As soon as the prisoners get in, they were told beforehand, you're not allowed to say anything negative about the prison. You're only allowed to give glowing reviews. We have the ability to pull this time whenever you want. Make sure that as we monitor you, you're not trying to say anything or give anything away.
Or you don't get paid. You're out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be punished. You will be thrown
At that
in the
point,
hole.
that's probably more of the thought in your head. Yeah.
There's just a million things running through their head.
I'm thinking of everyone still has that thing like, oh, this is just I can get out anytime I want. That thought is not really in their heads at this moment.
Well, there's one mom that comes up to Zimbardo after she meets with her son, and she goes, I've never seen my son this way. He's sullen. He's withdrawn. There just was no spark to him. Zimbardo brings the wife and a husband into his office, and he's talking. And as soon as the mom brings up all of these concerns, Zimbardo immediately goes on the attack, and he goes, what? Do you look at your son? Do you know anything about your son as far as how he's grown up? Do you know what it looks like when he's actually sad? I don't see a sad person. I just see a normal kid that's a part of an experiment. And then he looks at the dad and he goes, do you think your son can't handle this? Do you think that you didn't raise a man enough son to be able to go through this? Basically flips the dad on the mom, and both of them bully her into letting the son stay. Just playing all of these different games. So after
the man's an evil genius.
Yeah. After all the parents leave, Zimbardo goes back to, there might be a prison break tonight. What are we going to do? He ends up taking all the prisoners and he moves them up to, I believe it was a 5th floor storage room, bags over their heads again, taken up to this old musty storage room to where they spend basically until the 2:30 count up there. Zimbardo brings in extra guards to keep it down there. They actually pull the doors off of the prison and a few other things just to kind of make it look like if anybody shows up that the experiment's been abandoned, that they have a different idea of what they're going about now. And if they show up and nobody's there, maybe they'll just leave.
Yeah. They must have already released them.
Yep. 2:30 count rolls around, and Zimbardo's like, okay, well, they're not coming in any later than this. We're probably okay. This is probably just fabricated. Has everybody brought down? They end up doing the counts. Everybody gets to go to sleep that night after another long night of push-ups and numbers and reciting rules and all of this different stuff.
So there's 8 at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
There's 8. Day 4, barehanded toilet scrubbing. Counting rice. We're getting back to those minor annoyances and boredoms that they're giving them in prison. There's more counts just randomly during the day, more use of the hole. Prisoner 819 freaks out, realizing that his parents were no help at all, that his family showed up and they
saw the circumstances he was in and are just like, all right.
Didn't realize what was going on. He ends up being thrown into the hole, which ends up leading to him being in the hole for a number of hours instead of the 1 hour mandated time limit. More of these other inmates are instructed to basically harass 819 while he's in the hole, because as he's in the hole, everybody is being punished for him freaking out and rebelling against the guards. So they're out there doing push-ups while he's sitting in the hole, and the guards are saying, tell him what you have to do because he was screwing up. Tell him what you have to do because he didn't follow the rules, because he wasn't listening to us. The whole entire time they're walking up and down the yard as they're slamming these billy clubs in their hands. These guys are in cleaning barehanded. You're scrubbing toilets that you get a bag put over your head, taken to these bathrooms to clean with your bare hands. Then you had the bag put back over your head. They'll take you different routes around the building to kind of disorient you. They'll take you on elevator rides for no reason.
Make you feel like it's larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're actually in a prison. Like there's a lot of space here, not that just you're, in a basement.
And you're not seeing anything else this whole entire time. Interestingly enough, I believe it was day 2, going back, Zimbardo steps in and he goes, one of the other ways that we're going to calm this down is you guys are going to choose 3 inmates that are going to come in. They're going to be a part of your grievance panel. They bring any of these grievances to me. I'll listen to these grievances. If I can do anything about this, I will. If not, I will let you know. One of the things that they asked for is they wanted religious services. Enter pastor or priest McDermott. Father McDermott shows up. He had already been a parishioner, or not a parishioner, a chaplain.
A man of the cloth.
Yeah, in a couple jails that were in Washington, D.C. So he kind of has an understanding of how prison life works and all this kind of stuff.
This guy's a legitimate, man of the clergy.
Yeah.
Okay.
He shows up to meet with the prisoners, and the priest tells the inmates that he will reach out to their families about public defenders. Now, this kind of gets weird because the priest is showing up for an experiment that he knows is fake. He's telling these people that he's going to reach out to a public defender about their cases to come in and speak with him. The fuck? What's a public defender going to do about imaginary cases?
Well, I'm trying to think of when I hear this stuff, I'm trying to put myself in the position of those people and try to understand their mindset, which is, frankly impossible. But priest comes in. It's going to lend credibility to this whole experiment and everything. But at the same time, when he says, hey, we're going to get you a public defender, in my head, someone tells me I need a public defender, that says to me that I did something wrong.
Yeah.
And then it just lends legitimacy to, oh shit, am I really in prison? Did I do something wrong? Do I need an actual lawyer?
Well, 819, the guy who's had multiple problems and multiple freakouts, goes in there and starts talking to Father McDermott. Father McDermott, more or less, calls him a puss. He asks him how long he's been in there, and he says, this is day 4. Father McDermott tells him to stop crying and be less emotional.
Because this guy has been in actual prisons before. Yeah. He knows, okay.
He sees it. After this happens...
Still, at the same time,
legitimate to be concerned.
Yeah.
You were told by somebody that you weren't allowed to leave. Then
you're a fucking priest, and you're... Yeah.
A man of the cloth, the guy that you're supposed to look up to, yeah. Before he leaves, Zimbardo has a kind of a little conference with McDermott, and he asks him about it. Father McDermott says that he thinks that he's doing a great thing. And it's a weird way to go about it, but Father McDermott tells him the people that make the rules of prison, or the kind of the structures of prison, the people that mold prison policy are never the prisoners. They're the people outside the prisoners. So by taking people in the general public that could potentially do something and putting them in prison, you're doing a great service, because you are letting people in the public see what needs to be changed in the system. As he's leaving, Zimbardo's like, hey, you're not really going to call a public defender for these kids, right? And he goes, yeah, I told them that I would, and I'm going to. And Zimbardo's like, it's a fucking experiment. What do you... No. What's a public defender going to do for these
He's like,
guys?
what kind of experiment is this?
Yeah.
Like, I've never... Okay, so hold on. You're calling me in to speak to these people as if they're prisoners, but you're actually treating... This is supposed to be an experiment, but you're actually denying them the things that even actual prisoners have the right to get, is a public defender.
But at the same time, Zimbardo's like, you know this is an experiment. I'm going to let these guys out eventually. What's the public defender
I feel like
do?
he's trying to keep heat off of him. I don't think he's thinking of like, hey, I think he wants to keep this thing going. And if any type of public defender got wind of this, they're going to be like, there's got to be something wrong here. Yeah, there's contracts signed and everything, but if he's not allowing them to get out of there, I think he's worried about something coming back on him at this point.
Yeah, I think there is too. 819 completely shattered by the fact that the priest just told him to nut up or shut up.
Yeah.
Ends up coming back.
The seatbelt back here is broken. What do I do?
Comes back. One of the guards tells him to get in line. He gets in the guard's face, immediately goes back into the hole, and just has a full meltdown. Enough to where Zimbardo comes and gets him from the hole, and he brings him out, and he's talking to him, and he goes, it's okay. You can leave. And 819 goes, everybody else in the prison hates me. I can't leave knowing that they think that I'm a bad person.
I might still have to see these people around town.
Zimbardo looks him in the eyes, and he said that it was like looking into the eyes of a child. And he goes, this isn't prison. You are whatever your name is. I am Dr. Zimbardo. We aren't in prison. This is an experiment. You can go. Just leave. It will be okay. We will call somebody to come pick you up. 819 is still kind of fighting it, but at the same time, it's just his world has been shattered. He doesn't know up from down. So as soon as Zimbardo says that, he goes,
this
okay.
Is day 4?
Yeah. Day 4. Day 4, you got 2 guys that drop out. Day 4, basically to kind of bring out the numbers, you got to bring in the alternates. Day 4, one of the prisoners that arrives is 416. 416.
Oh, there's alternate guards and alternate prisoners?
Yeah. So you're getting thrown in on day 4. You don't know anything that's gone on yet.
No, and you're coming in. So basically, this is like jury duty. Mm-hmm. You're kind of just hanging around to see if they're going to need you. And at this point, if 416 arrives on day 4, he's got to be like, oh, shit, I'm only going to be here, 4 less days than these other people.
Yeah. So I'll still get paid. I'll just get paid less.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he doesn't know anything that's going on. After his first interaction with the guards at the first count, he's like, fuck this. I don't like this at all. Soon as they get served lunch, he's like, food strike. Not doing it. Not playing your guys' games. I'm going on a hunger strike. You can't do anything about this. So they begin throwing the sausages that they make at him and telling him that he needs to eat them, and that that nobody else will be released from the table until he eats his dinner. Once he doesn't do that, he gets thrown in the hole. These sausages that have just rolled around get thrown in the hole after him. He can't leave the hole until he eats the sausages. And while that's happening, everybody outside is doing jumping jacks. They are all, it's the exact same thing that they did to 819. They're telling them that they are being punished because of his actions. All he has to do is eat these sausages and then they can go. Multiple things start.
Talk about buttered sausage.
Yeah, as far as the guards.
Gary Busey would think this was crazy.
As far as being the guards that are preparing the meals, I'm sure they weren't going all out and extravagant. Shit starts to get a little weirder while he's in the hole. The guards, I don't know if I would say for their amusement or a way to degrade these guys further, they start making the inmates play leapfrog.
Now, at this point, are the guards kind of being left to handle these things as they see fit or come up with these ideas, or are these coming down from who's basically serving as the warden?
There's a lot of conjecture about how far these guys were led into some of this stuff. There's some people that believe that they were basically fed these different things to do. There's certain aspects of the guard meeting where Zimbardo brings up different things like counts are a very good way to get everybody's attention all at the same time to where you can assert your dominance.
Because the guards have certain stipulations that if they're not fulfilling their duties as guards, they get kicked out. They have alternates, and then they don't get paid as well. Okay.
So, and I'm not... This is kind of one of the first things that happens where it's like, this isn't something that Zimbardo or somebody else said. They start forcing the prisoners to play leapfrog. And when you're playing leapfrog in short smocks and you have no underwear on, there's going to be a lot of dicks and balls and chocolate starfish making appearances.
Look like my kid when he FaceTimed me. Yeah, okay. I'm very familiar. I've been recently provided the visual image of that.
So some of these guards are into it. They're laughing, they're joking, they're making fun of them. Oh, first day. I think this is what really broke things. And I don't know if there was an Irishman that they had brought in to be a part of this, but as they're stripping them down and giving them their smocks, the guards start making fun of their penises. Start pointing out a guy who
Probably
has
the most accurate thing.
real droopy balls. Guy's got a tiny pecker on him. I don't know if you can be friends after they're laughing at your dick after you just got naked in front of them with the bag still over their heads.
Oh, yeah.
They don't know who they're pointing at. They don't know who's getting it.
So in everyone's mind, everything is being leveled against them.
Yep.
They could be taught. Yeah.
They were pretty much all white guys. So again, there's going to be nobody that has enough confidence to be like, I'm packing a hog here.
There was the one Asian guy.
I didn't want to say it.
Okay.
Maybe.
I said it.
Maybe. Some of the other guards weren't real pumped about watching these guys play leapfrog, and they start to get a little freaked out. Now, there's this one kind of alpha guard. Basically, what they found afterwards was guards fell into three different positions. They either fell into the alpha of their shift, they fell into the one that's a little bit more hesitant but will always take orders from the alpha, and then there was an empathetic guard that would try to slip people extra food that wouldn't be handing out these punishments as much. Some people cared, some people didn't, and then some people wanted to make a big deal of this.
Because of everything that the inmates are going through, I've completely stopped focusing on the fact that this is as much of an experiment for the people performing as guards as it is for the inmates.
And that's where it's kind of tough, because can you really call it an experiment in Zimbardo's vein if Zimbardo is telling them what to do?
Yeah.
You're trying to test a theory of people going to that worst place while in power. Mm-hmm. If you're telling them to do bad shit, are you really testing the guards? This is where
I think it plays back into that experiment of just following orders.
Milgram.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's where I think he gets shit for this, is because we'll talk about the findings that Zimbardo came out with. I think he just stumbled into another version of Milgram.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different situation, but at the same time, it's kind of lending more that way.
I wonder at what point, or in his mind, what, if you had to put a percentage on it, how much of this percentage is about how the prisoners are reacting, or how much of it is about how the guards are behaving? Or does it fluctuate during the time frame where during the beginning of the experiment, he's like, okay, it's 80% about the prisoners. I'm seeing how they react. But then seeing how the guards are reacting, he's like, oh, this is probably maybe where I need to lean into. And now it's more about this. What can I get these guys to do just based on orders?
I don't know if it's ever really that, because he's so deep in at this point.
Yeah.
He's fallen away from this test that he had, this theory that he had. And I think that this is kind of the first eye-opening experience. Like, this is the first kind of him being inside the experiment, looking at it and be like, oh, shit, somebody should probably be watching this. After some of the guards got uncomfortable with Leapfrog, there was this one main alpha guard. They called him John Wayne. He was this douchebag kid that basically put on this persona to where he came in and had a southern accent. You boys like Mexico type shit, just being a real tough guy. He had a mustache. He made references after this to he saw the movie Cool Hand Luke and wanted to adapt his character to that. I think that
That's the bad guy in the movie. Fuck.
Well, there's a little something about it where it's like this blame dispersal. If he can say that he was just playing a character,
it's disassociation from the responsibility of your actions.
And then he also goes a step further and says Zimbardo was the one that was egging us on to do this shit. That then furthers him away from any association with it.
It sounds like a trial of a nuts of war criminal, just being like, listen, like I was serving my rank. I was doing what I was expected to do. And honestly, these orders didn't even come from me. I was just doing what I was told.
John Wayne steps up. He picks two of the inmates. He says, you are females, bend over. He points at another two inmates. He goes, you guys are the males, get behind him. He starts telling them to hump the females that are in front of them for his amusement while he's just laughing, watching. Now, I don't think Zimbardo would have said, have these guys simulate sexual acts on each other. I can't think that he would go that specific.
I don't know at this point. So the devil's gonna be in the details here. So if that's available, when this is going on, this is during the day, right?
Yep.
Assuming this is, with this being Zimbardo's, baby right now, I assume that he's paying close attention to all the activities that are going on from his superintendent's office or whatever. At any point, he can, as the role of the superintendent, even in a regular prison, a superintendent would step in that situation and say, hey, knock it off. At this point, even if he's like, I didn't tell them to do that, but I'm allowing them to do that. To me, there's not a difference.
Yeah. Eventually, after everybody's had enough of watching these guys fake fuck each other, they pull 416 out of the hole, who I have to assume at that point in time when he was hearing the shit that was going on outside of the hole, he's like, God, thank God I'm in this hole. Thank God that...
Or just confused as shit.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
What's going on?
Who's humping who?
416 is commanded to do push-ups. John Wayne walks up behind him. As he goes up, John Wayne puts his foot on his back and jams him back down into the ground, and he tells him to fuck the floor. Just absolute degradation at this point in time. When he doesn't perform to his liking, he sends him back in the hole to where 416 spends the entire night. And again, you have to think about, this is only, we're talking going into, we still have a little bit for day 4.
Day 4, and any of these, I mean, it sounds like they were already keeping them in there longer, but there's a big difference between a couple hours and the entire night.
Yeah. Before he goes back into the hole for the night, they get a parole board hearing. You get to go in front of the parole board of these esteemed secretaries. And the head of the parole board is none other than Carlo, the former prisoner. There was a point in time during the documentary, the Silent Rage documentary, that really put kind of this time frame in a certain encapsulation for me. Mm-hmm. As Zimbardo is talking about these secretaries, he calls them all just beautiful secretaries. Like, he doesn't have to throw that in. But there's a certain point in time to where you could just point to a secretary and be like, hey, you're hot. That's not harassment or anything like that. That's just a guy who's a psychologist who's supposed to be on the cutting edge of, like, maybe treating some people with respect.
It's just an episode of Mad Men.
It's just so wild. After the experiment, Carlo was talked about his time on the parole board. He said that he became the person that he despised most during his 17 years in prison. The final decision maker, the guy that will listen to your story, but he's already made up his mind about what he's going to do for you before you can even plead your case. He says that every one of these guys comes in and asks for a pardon or asks for parole, and he tells them, if you've caused any trouble, it's just not going to happen for you. There's no way that you're ever going to get out. You're not going to see the light of day. Again, just reinforcing this thought of, hey, we can't get out. Now he's saying you're never going to get out. Is this going to end? Is this going to stop?
I know we've talked about the same number kind of repeatedly as far as these people that are kind of being what they're considering the troublemakers. Is anybody at this point, from what you could discern, has been just trying to be a model inmate?
The one parolee, the one guy that got paroled.
Okay.
Excuse me. At the same time, the one guy that gets paroled isn't the only one that's rolling with the punches. He's not the only one that's listening. He's not the only one that's answering. But it doesn't matter, because these guards are assuming that if they're listening and if they are following all the instructions, that they're just trying to suck up. So they're also still being punished. There's just no way to get out of this without being in trouble.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, if you're obedient, you're considered a brown noser, and they're going to punish you for being obedient at that point in time. 416, still back in hunger strike, like I said, goes back into the hole after the parole board. That's where he would spend the rest of his night for that night. They were told to write letters that they were going to be sent home, but all of these letters were going to be specifically dictated for the guards, talking about what a great time they're having, how the guards are the nicest people, all of these different praises. I'm having the best. This is the best sleepaway camp that I've ever been to. All this kind of shit. At the end of the letters, kind of interesting. There were a couple of them that were signed as they were reviewing them by their prison numbers instead of their names. So that's how deep these people are down into this hole, that these kids are into this hole, that they are now associating themselves by a number instead of a name.
Part of me also thinks that if the guards are dictating these, maybe they said to sign their names, but the guards are just putting their numbers down. But what I'm saying is they're in that much of a headspace in the role of the guard. So again, this comes into play that it's not just, you hear Stanford Prison Experiment and you're just like, it's the prisoners. No, it's as much the guards as it is the prisoners.
You're seeing that Milgram-esque, are these people going to follow my orders?
Yeah.
How closely are they going to? There would be 2 visits that night for 2 inmates that had more people coming in. They were cut basically in half in time because these kids are starting to crack and they're starting to say things to their parents. And as soon as that's happening, the guards are cutting this off. So I'm sure once the letters got home and they saw how great they were having, the greater time they were having, and then they're like, well, they cut us off. They made us leave. Parents start getting concerned just seeing these 2 about what kind of food they're eating. The prisoners just looking defeated. Their eyes are sullen. They're basically just right there. They talk to Milgram about starting to try and contact a lawyer, and Milgram goes, oh, don't worry about that. The priest said he was going to do it. I'm sure he's going to get a hold of you. They're going to get this public defender in here.
At that point, that shouldn't even... How is that? Oh my God. Okay. I'm trying to... So this is the parents that are talking to him about that, right?
Yep.
They're saying, hey, we're going to sue you because you're like the treatment that our child is receiving. He's like, hey, don't worry about it. The priest is already getting someone to sue me. So save your, like, what the fuck?
Father Pat's bringing somebody in. Let's everybody take a step back and calm down. Day 5 in the morning, Zimbardo gets a visit from a guy who's, of course, going to come in and look at this experiment while it's going on and talk to him. Psychologist Gordon Bauer. Gordon Bauer shows up to check on this study. He realizes that Zimbardo's just gone. He's in. This independent variable. He had to either be a superintendent or he had to be the psychologist that was overseeing this. He could never be both. And as soon as he decided to be a superintendent...
He had to be an observer is the whole point.
Yeah, he had to bring somebody else in to be an independent observer to make sure this is happening, or just bring somebody else into the superintendent role.
Yeah.
Take your hands completely out of this.
Yes.
If you want this to be fully ethical and if you want this to be believed in, take yourself out of it.
And have that person perform the role of the superintendent where they're controlling the guards against this shit.
It's another position of power that you could then point to and say, this guy took this ultimate supreme position of power.
And it puts you in a position where it's like doing a focus group. You're sitting behind the glass and you're getting everyone's assessments without your influence. If he's looking at what's happening here and he already has it in his head with this experiment of what results he wants to see or which ones are favorable to him or some way to go ahead and just make it seem more positive for what he is trying to accomplish, he is going to, even if he's not intending to, he's going to be making moves to steer it down that path.
Yeah. At the same time, if you're looking to confirm the result that you're going into it with, what better way to do that than be the magic hand?
Yeah.
You're going to get the exact result that you wanted to if you're the superintendent.
You're not going into this to fail. You're going in to prove something that you already think is correct, and you're influencing the way that it's turning out to make it fit what your hypothesis would be.
Yeah, so how legitimate can this study really be if you're making it happen? This guy named 5704 has an incident where as he's coming back, he gets into a pushing match with one of the guards.
He was in the hole.
Well, the pushing match starts as they're coming back. I don't know if it was from Count or from a meal or something like that. One of the guards had pushed him in the back with a billy club. He turned around and pushed him back. He got swarmed by the guards. He ends up getting thrown in the hole. They pull him out of the hole. They bring him into his room. They chain him to his bed. And somehow he's close enough to where he can pull the pins out of the door to the cell. Mm-hmm. So as they're trying to come back in, the door's jamming because there's no pivot.
Yeah.
As soon as they push in on the door, it's either going to fall off or it's not going to move. Mm-hmm. And once they finally get in there, they unchain him. As he's leaving, one of the guys goes to push him again. He pushes him back. Guy goes to swing the baton. He takes the baton and he pulls back like he's going to rack this dude in the head with the baton.
The inmate takes the baton and is going to hit the guard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in time, the other two guards swarm in. They end up putting him back in chains. They tie him up and they basically hog tie him and they leave him out in the middle of the floor in the yard. Just complete, utter. It's just so bad. I can't blame the kid for wanting to use the billy club to smash the guy that's been threatening with him.
Yeah, you've done nothing wrong.
It's just basic defense. After this, 819 he can't do it anymore. He's paroled. Who was it? Oh, no. I believe it was 5704 that was released because of the violence aspect of what was going on.
And when someone leaves, again, another alternate is brought in at that point to always keep the population up at 9 prisoners for the experiment. Okay.
Now they're out, though. Now the max number that they have, because they had the parolee that left, 419 that left, and 8612, the original guy. So you pull the 3 out. There was somebody else that was dismissed. I forgot what he did, but it was something that
now you're down to 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have 8. You still have these 3 guards on shift at a time. This woman named Christina Maslach ends up showing up. A part of this is she's going to interview the inmates. She's about to join the staff at Berkeley as a professor there. She was Zimbardo's graduate assistant. She was also dating Zimbardo at the time. Now, I want to bang Zimbardo for that pretty hard. I can't bang Zimbardo for it too hard because they actually never got divorced and were together until Zimbardo died in 2024.
It's still insanely unethical.
Insanely unethical, but at the same time, they made it work. And I don't know if this guy just had a hell of a brainwashing program.
This is so bad you were just grasping its like silver linings here.
It doesn't work unless it works.
He stayed married.
So she comes in that day. There's a guard that shows up, John Wayne, for his prison shift. She notices that he's a very polite kid. Everything seems to be going very well with him. He seems like he's
very stable.
Yeah, very stable. She goes in. She talks to Zimbardo a little bit. She ends up witnessing the guards abusing the inmates as they had the hoods over their heads and they were chained together as they were all walking to the bathroom, and immediately freaks out. She confronts Zimbardo. She tells him that he's basically torturing these kids. Zimbardo's still pushing back. He's saying, this is the experiment. This is what we have to do. She basically gives him an ultimatum. She says, we're done if you keep doing this. You have to end this experiment. It has to be done. Zimbardo still takes like a couple hours to think about this and come to the realization that what he's done is torture, and these are kids that he's putting these kids through. And he's completely...
not paying the kids. He's not paying them for this. They did not agree to this.
He's just completely lost the plot.
Yeah.
He realizes that he's in too deep. He ends up coming back at the guard switch before the 2:30 a.m. count. Zimbardo comes in and he goes, hey, no 2:30 count. Let him sleep through the night. Some of these guards are kind of angry because they are enjoying a little bit of this power. Some of these guards are looking at it and saying, well, are we really sticking to the plan of this whole experiment if now you're telling us not to do this? Even though we weren't worried about you telling us to have control of this and be brutal before, now we're kind of starting to look at this as, don't we need to stick close to this plan? Next day, morning count, there's lightened punishments. 416 is still on his hunger strike. The public defender comes in.
Okay, so Father Pat made good.
Father Pat makes good. The public defender comes in. Public defender says that he's going to start looking into their cases and he's going to start seeing if he's able to bail these kids out.
They're not in fucking prison. There are no fucking cases. The only cases in this situation are the case that's going to come at fucking Zimbardo for this.
Yep. Yeah, just very interesting. So
like,
after...
The public defender comes in and should immediately be like, you guys don't have any records. They literally checked you guys for criminal backgrounds. Like, let them out or I'm going to fucking sue you.
Well, yeah, you guys don't have any rights. You've told me a couple things that's going on in here. This seems pretty bad. Like, this is kidnapping, essentially, at this point in time. As they get back, 416, still on hunger strike, ends up getting forced into his cell. They bring the sausages in, and all three guards stand around him and tell him to start sucking on the sausages like they're a dick. Now, I got to give as much credit to 416 as possible. He goes through with the sausage fellatio. I'd never eat him. he holds this hunger strike so tightly that he will...
I'm going to suck it, but I ain't going to eat it.
Yeah, dude. Just a very tough guy to
Not going to lie to you.
All this stuff.
The, obvious blowjob references aside, man, if I was on a hunger strike and food hits my mouth, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to not just try to take a nibble.
You got to assume, though.
That's why I'm saying props to this guy.
Think about, I don't think they ever changed the sausages.
Oh.
So these are the sausages from the previous day.
Never mind.
Rolled around on the floor.
Out on the sausages.
Yeah, just not a good way to do. Zimbardo finally comes to his senses. During one of the counts, it was the afternoon. I believe it was before they were going to start dinner preparations. He goes in front of all of them, and he tells them the experiment's over, that they need to go ahead and fill out all of the diaries and different things that they have as far as their exit.
Yeah, he needs to at least get some information out of it. He's not saying, hey, we're canceling everything about this. He's still in the mindset of like, well, if I'm going to end this, I'm still going to need to get some shit out of it.
And at the same time, I also need to pull as much shit out of this as possible to justify what I just did to these kids for 6 days.
If I ever want to get funding again for another experiment, it will not be,
Yeah, and that's the double-edged sword that you play is if you run an experiment and you take a bunch of money and the experiment doesn't yield any good results, you're probably not getting another grant.
And especially if it doesn't yield good results and you did this shit.
Yeah, then it gets real bad. So the prisoners are interviewed first, then the guards come. I believe it was the next day. They had a group meeting with the guards and the prisoners. And
like all together in one room?
Hearing the interactions and the things that these prisoners are saying while these guards are trying to justify their actions. John Wayne, 416, not 416, John Wayne, the prison guard, Dave Eshelman. During this point in time, one of the prisoners is talking to him and he goes, what were you thinking? And he goes, well, based upon what Zimbardo told us, what we needed to do, I decided to run my own little experiment. And you see this kid just in hysterics because what possible experiment could you be running at this point in time? And he goes, I kind of wanted to see what I could say to somebody before they snapped. That was my experiment. Was I wanted to see how far I could push it before I got a reaction. He goes, and then when we reacted, he goes, well, that was just all a part of it.
Yeah.
Just
Then
completely.
I knew how to get you.
Yeah, he just completely tries to justify this in front of a kid that's almost sobbing just thinking about the experience.
Is
that this dude put
Zimbardo
him
at
through.
all like looking at this like, oh, fuck?
He's taking notes. I mean, he's seeing all this kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, right around this time, so we're talking, I believe it was August 14th that this started. August 21st, there's a riot in San Quentin. There's a riot in the jail that Carlo had previously been in over prisoner treatment. September 9th through the 13th, an episode that we did way back, the Attica Prison Rebellion, goes on in New York.
Fuck, I forgot that was later. Forgot that happened in the 70s. For some reason, I was thinking that happened earlier, but yeah.
So you have this experiment that's culminating right around these prison riots that are going on.
Yeah.
Riots that in Attica, I believe there were 4 guards killed and 8 inmates killed. So now what Zimbardo's doing kind of takes on this whole new matter of importance because he was studying this interaction between guards and prisoners.
I don't fucking like that. How they fucking turned that into like, now it's the good work that was being done.
Well, and they jump on it. This is pretty generally accepted. I know when I was in college and I had a Psych 101 class, this was taught. This was in the books. It might have been one of the first times that I had heard about this that kind of made me fascinated with it. But recently, and not terribly recently, but like I said, 1974, this is one of the major things that they start looking at these and they're like, we need IRBs. We need these institutional review boards to go through and make sure that human rights aren't violated.
Yeah.
That things have to change. That we need somebody to be the fail-safe for once they read through all of these projects, what's wrong with them? How can we fix them? How can we make these things ethical? It blows me away how fast this all starts to change. But at the same time, it doesn't completely, like full national IRBs for any sort of research don't end up getting completely implemented until like 1991. It takes them that long.
For these behavioral experiments?
Any experiments that are going on, these IRBs have to look into them like that. People were obviously critical of the ethics because they should have been the entire time, and they start to voice their concerns. Like I said, David Eshelman completely shifts the blame to Zimbardo. Zimbardo is going to carry the weight of this. He should carry the weight of this. Jaffe is going to carry a lot of the weight of this, the warden that was underneath him. Mm-hmm. At the same time, everybody that could have checked him inside the prison was already a subordinate. They were already his students. They were already, I mean, he was his undergrad.
Yeah.
He was right there with him. He was the guy that was supposed to be his assistant, so he can't look at Zimbardo and say, hey, man, maybe you're going off the rails a little bit. Ultimately, that falls in Zimbardo.
Again, that's like a chain of command thing.
Well, and at the same time, I think Eshelman is kind of starting to realize that this doesn't look good on him at all.
Yeah.
So if he can start lumping some back on Zimbardo, it's going to change it. He said that he completely tried to play this character. That's where he got the draw from. He watched Cool Hand Luke and saw this, so he's talking about the mirrored shades and everything like that. 8612, the first guy to go, like I said, comes out with his interview and says, yeah, no, it was all an act. I drew on my acting background to play the part to get out of there. You were so freaked out that you came back and told the rest of the inmates that you weren't getting out. Like, there might have been some acting going on. Also, you were acting well enough to fool a psychologist? That seems a little odd. Maybe we're repainting history a little bit. It's crazy because he ends up being like a prison therapist later on in life. Like he follows into the psychological field doing this kind of stuff after he was a part of this
I was
experiment.
going to say 3 days completely changed that trajectory.
Well, Zimbardo comes out confident after this and says, none of these kids have any lasting impacts. We're going to follow up with them. We're going to do interviews 6 months out, a year out, 5 years out, 10 years out. I can assure you, all of these interviews that we've done, all of these people are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're completely back to being normal members of society. I have a very hard time believing that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take a long, protracted amount of trauma to give you...
It's a small amount, but when it's so much in such a short amount of time, yeah.
Well, this is the other thing, too, that is kind of the underlier of the whole thing. Can you think of a time that you've gone for 6 days without seeing the sun and being out in the sunlight?
No.
How do you know what's day and what's night besides what they're
Yeah.
telling you? They're controlling your schedule to the nth degree that they could tell you it's 2:30 in the morning. You have no
Technically, you
idea.
don't know how many actual days you've been in there. You're taking a guess.
There was during the silent rage, Zimbardo was walking down through the areas and they'd been turned back into offices and stuff. But in one of the cells, there's the scrapings on the wall for the days that were being
Jesus.
counted. Like, that's how far into this they went. 2004 rolls around. We have another kind of not great military thing. You know anything about Abu Ghraib?
I've heard it, but I no idea.
So in March 2004, torture and abuse out of Abu Ghraib starts to hit the media. Basically, what Abu Ghraib was it was a prison in Iraq that Saddam Hussein was running. That any political prisoners were being held in, tortured, anything like that. We go in, we overthrow Saddam with the help of our friends. That thanks for being there. I'm sorry that you had to go over there and commit your troops for something that was George Bush's. It was a Bush problem.
Yeah.
It was
a vendetta.
GW not getting him the first time after we supported them after they committed chemical warfare attacks against Iran.
Yeah.
And we told them, we still got this guy's back. GW couldn't get him. George Bush goes in and gets him after they overthrow this.
H-dub.
Yep. They go ahead. Yeah, that's right. They go ahead and turn this into a new prison for any loyalists to Saddam. And they immediately just start torturing these inmates. And a lot of the things that came out, there was I believe he was called the Scarecrow, and they were taking pictures with these people. But the Scarecrow was a guy that was standing on a box with his arms stretched out, with wires, assuming they're attached to something electrical, pointing off of his fingers. He's wearing a sandbag over his head, and he's made to stand there as they're taking pictures of him. They're getting these dudes nude and piling them on top of each other. And there are soldiers that are MPs in this prison that are standing next to them, smiling with thumbs up, like really enjoying what's going on. They're making these dudes suck each other's dicks. They're doing just awful, awful things. And of course, when that gets back to the United States, you have to look at who's watching this prison, who's in charge of what's going on here. And all of these MPs are saying, well, we were just regular soldiers. We had never been guards before. We didn't know what to do. There was nobody from the top.
You didn't know not to pile them naked and make them suck each other's dicks?
It's wild, the amount of deflection, but at the same time, who's the guy that you call to come in and try to explain this?
Is it Zimbardo?
Zimbardo comes to the defense, and he actually testifies at a couple of these people's trials. And immediately, Bush, Cheney, everybody go to, well, it was just a few bad apples. And Zimbardo pushes back, and he goes, it's not a few bad apples. It's not a bad bushel. It's the whole process that's poisoned that's causing these people to do this, because there's no oversight. Which is interesting and ironic that he's the one that's saying there's no oversight on this now.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. It's a tremendously terrible thing that's going on. Coming from him, it doesn't sound good.
No, my only knowledge of this guy up to this point has been just this like power grab. And now it's hard to look at it this way and say, well, first of all, yeah, there are bad apples. I understand that it's a bad system and everything like that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but it doesn't have to be one or the other, or not all three of them. It can be bad apples. It can be bad, what is it? What business?
No bad apples, no bad bushels.
No bad bushel. Just about it can be all of them.
It plays a role in so many things that you see. I'm not saying that all police forces are bad.
No, but if you have a group, regardless of what that group is, there are going to be people that fall to the bad side of the spectrum. That's just, you're not going to get a group if you have an actual sample size of completely benevolent people.
How many things over the years, though, have we seen where people have been willing participants in this shit?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it's
you go with
a
the
systemic
tide is what it
problem
is.
for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
And systems are always something that's very important to look at. If there's bad people at the top and they're allowing this kind of stuff to happen, then the system is corrupted and the system needs to be fixed. And again, I'm not saying that all police forces are like that. I'm not saying that all military groups are like that, anything like that. But there are some that shine a bad light because it is a bad system. Some of the arguments, 1975, there were arguments against these demand characteristics that he had put out saying you basically baited the trap yourself by telling these guys that they needed to maintain control. That immediately should nullify any findings that you have. To Zimbardo's half credit, he has come out and taken pretty much all the blame that he could for how bad this experiment went.
Yeah.
But every time he takes credit for how bad the experiment goes, he always says that he stands by his findings. So regardless of the methods, he believes that what he found was true.
It's hard to view that as a genuine admission of his remorse or something like that when he's just like, but
2007, he comes under fire again because of what we talked about earlier, the selection bias of using prison life as the kind of the idea to get these people in there. You're sending them into this experiment already having that same idea that you were talking about, the dragnets and the FBI shows and seeing what this happens.
Yep.
It's undoubtedly true. 2018, there's a guy named Theobald Le Teixeira that argued the validity and merit because he's using the guard interviews from Eshelman to try to say, well, these guys are saying that you kind of egged them on to do it. So how does that all work? Your request equaled the conclusions that you got, and that's why this all happened. Like this wasn't, you didn't find anything that you weren't going to find because you demanded these requests that were going to ultimately give you exactly what you wanted.
And the other thing too is he's like, well, I stand by the results of the work or the work itself. Yeah, you shaped it. You're completely responsible for it. If you're admitting fault and the fact that you don't stand by it, like you can't do both of them.
Yeah, it's got to be one way or the other. Just because you feel like you concluded with what you started with doesn't mean that you did it correctly at all. And I think that there is a lot of, I think Theobald definitely hits the nail on the head. I don't quite agree with the guard interviews because, again, these guards, I think, were getting more creative than what Zimbardo could have said.
It's that, let's see what we can get away with.
Yeah. And he gave us strict outline. We just got to paint within the lines of this project.
And if we are not being told we're in trouble, then we can keep going until we do get in trouble.
And he never did.
Yeah.
He never, ever did. It's just all around a very interesting subject. I love these psychological dives just to see where these people's minds are. It's horrendous what these kids had to go through. And it's insane because we're talking about 6 days.
Yeah.
Like 6 days in hell that you don't know what day starts, what day ends, how it all goes. In the meantime, you're just constantly being messed with. And as crazy as it sounds, I do feel like when people talk about, oh, there should be mandatory military service, you should spend a little time in prison. It should be something that you should really see and get a feel for to kind of understand how bad it is. I understand that these people are criminals that are going in there to do time. You're a nonviolent offender. You sell a little weed. You get caught with a pound on you, whatever. That's a lot of weed. But you go to prison for a mandatory minimum sentence for a nonviolent offense, and you're around people that are being messed with all the time. There's plenty of good prison guards out there. There's plenty of bad prison guards out there.
Yeah.
And the psychological kind of fight that you have to be in to try to stay normal. If prisons are really, truly about rehabilitation, you can't talk about rehabilitation and not understand that there have to be things in place to give these people another chance.
Yeah.
We talk about how bad recidivism rates are, how many people go back in.
What are you hoping to rehabilitate? They have to have some form of humanity. You have to not destroy that part of them in order to go ahead and rehabilitate. So the process in which you're destroying that while you're saying you're rehabilitating, it's just like you said, the system doesn't work.
Well, what do you do when you go back onto the outside? You're not given any new skills to try to make the money to better your life, so you fall back into
you have no
old
options.
habits.
Yeah, the options have been taken away, and if anything, you're now at a disadvantage because you have that on your record.
So there's so many more things. We have so many episodes that we can do about prison industrial complex and everything like that and private prisons. But just a little peek into kind of what a psychological experiment looks like, how it can go wrong. There's a ton of other ones that we can pull
What gets approved by a university?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like I said before, had this been at a time when they could perform legal action and they could have sued Stanford for some of this stuff, they'd have sued him out of existence. 8612 said that was his major regret, his one regret from doing it. The prisoner that said that he tried to get out because he wasn't allowed to study. So the only thing that I regret about this is that I didn't sue Zimbardo into oblivion.
I'm sure that's a common feeling throughout a lot of those prisoners.
I can imagine for sure. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. You got anything else?
This was a ride. It was a ride.
Late night ride.
I can't wait to do and dig into this kind of stuff. This just opens the door of saying like what other countries did, what other universities did. It leads us more into like the government aspect of it. And did these findings find their way? Was it, again, the Milgram thing and how it's all tied together? There's a lot to kind of branch off on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is Historically High Pod, Historically High POD, and we are on Twitter at Historically High. That's Historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.